Yes, I just shouted that in a park in the middle of a bunch of people. Ha ha to me. Hey, I'm Zarina Matcha, and you're watching The Rational Female. One of the things that feminism has seriously destroyed is the significance of men and masculinity. Since feminism views gender roles as oppressive rather than as a natural complementary occurrence between men and women, people nowadays often view being feminine as weak and being masculine as aggressive or, in some cases, toxic. To any man watching this video, on behalf of my gender, I would like to wholeheartedly apologize for all of the horrible nonsense that men have been put through in the West over the last 6 decades. Being a man is a wonderful, important, and necessary thing for the survival of our species. Masculinity should be respected, not tarnished. The push to make men more emotionally weak is something that thousands of men, like Jordan Peterson, are all fighting and speaking out about. Yet sadly, these men are often vilified by the mainstream media and called misogynist. It's absolutely heartbreaking how much the media vilifies men who are traditionally masculine and who go against this contemporary woke push to destroy manhood. But what people need to understand is that this push to erase masculinity, as well as to erase womanhood, such as with the extreme end of the modern trans movement, is largely thanks to feminism. It is feminism that told everyone that men are fundamentally oppressors of women and labeled natural gender relations as an oppressive male-dominated patriarchy. This has brainwashed millions of women across the West into fearing and hating men and believing that women are somehow dealt a much harder hand in life by virtue of being born female. Dr. Warren Farrell's excellent book, The Myth of Male Power, dives deep into this mislabeling of manhood and explains the narrative of men holding privilege in society as being greatly misguided. Roy Baumeister's book, Is There Anything Good About Men, also does the same thing. I'd like to spend this video talking about why men and masculinity are important and why we must stop allowing for the vilification of men and the male role. But before I continue, I'd like to ask this important question. Does feminism actually care about men? You see, feminists will often say that they care about equal rights and that they support men's rights. Well, here's the actual truth from a woman who has studied feminism in depth. They do not. Feminism is an extremely manipulative ideology designed to destroy any harmonious relationships between men and women. Teaching women that men are upholders of patriarchy and male privilege is a very convincing way to make women think that all men are somehow dangerous and not to be trusted. It's increasingly manipulative for feminists to then turn around and say, but we care about men too. There is currently a men's rights activist movement. Many men are actively speaking out about men's issues, such as fathers' custody rights, longer prison sentences, male domestic violence, and men doing most of the dangerous jobs in society. If feminism is all about equality, then there shouldn't be a men's rights movement in the first place. The fact that so many men are speaking up on these issues shows a failure of the feminist movement to listen to the concerns of 50% of the human population. Many men are excluded from domestic violence shelters. Anti-feminist activist Erin Pizzey spoke up about how the feminist movement often ignored male victims of domestic violence. Instead of viewing domestic violence as a humanitarian issue, most feminists view it as an issue of men harming women. They will often talk about men being violent towards women, but never about women being violent towards men, or even women being violent towards other women. Yes, statistically, lesbian couples are the highest perpetrators of domestic violence, but you will never hear feminists talk about that because it goes against their narrative. Now, of course, there are plenty of individual self-described feminist women out there who are happily married and don't dislike men. Yet what many of these women fail to understand is that feminism, as an ideology, subtly manipulates women into having an antagonistic attitude towards men. It does this without even realizing. For example, English feminist Louise Perry is happily married and does not dislike men, yet in her book The Case Against the Sexual Revolution, the antagonism towards men is prevalent all throughout. She constantly blames men for women's choices, rather than teaching women to have resilience and agency. Not to mention, she never once acknowledges where women manipulate and use men, such as how many women use sexuality as a form of manipulation over men. This is very sad, because a society that constantly frames men as bad and women as good and pure will never hold women accountable for our actions, and as a result, allows women to get away with horrendous crimes against men. such as the way Amber Heard got away with villainizing Johnny Depp for 4 years. Feminism has created a culture where saying men are pigs or men are shit after having one bad experience with a man is greatly encouraged and often celebrated by women. Both my former boyfriends are two of the loveliest people I know, and in most cases I have not been mistreated by men. Yet because I have had a couple occasions, including one extremely serious occasion where I was poorly treated by men, society will focus on that and paint me as a victim. They will take that one instance where a man mistreated me and generalize it to insist that all my experiences with men have been bad, while completely discounting all of the other positive and enjoyable experiences I've had with men. This is greatly sad and unfair. Perhaps because of our evolutionary negativity bias, we focus more on the negative experiences rather than the positive. Not to mention, a society rife with feminist bias does encourage vilification of men more than celebration and appreciation of men. If you try and tell feminists that men are important, while initially they may appear sympathetic, they will almost always flip it back to, but women have it so much harder. Here's the thing, we don't. It is just as difficult to be a man as it is to be a woman. Women and men both endure personal hardships and difficulties. Ironic as it may sound, coming from someone who constantly insists that men and women are different, when it comes down to it, we actually aren't that different on a basic human level. We're different as pertains to our biology and psychology, but in terms of our basic humanity, we are really the same. Both men and women experience fears, hopes, insecurities, dreams, passions, desires, and so on. Most people desire love and happiness, and most people experience fear and insecurity. These are universal human traits. How do I know this? I write fiction for a living, although I'm not currently living off it, and I recently released a novel called Tic-Tac-Toe that satirizes the contemporary woke feminist narrative. Tic-Tac-Toe depicts a society that takes feminism and cultural Marxism to its logical conclusion by showing that all men, or Ns as they are called in the book, are effectively second-class citizens. You can check out my trailer for this book up in the cards or in the description of this video. And yes, I'm going to start plugging this book in every single one of my videos until it is read by as many people as possible, because it's a bloody important novel that will help everyone collectively wake up and see this woke agenda for what it is and prevent it from doing further destruction to the next generation. Now, here are 3 reasons why men and masculinity are important and necessary. First of all, men are physically stronger than women and usually more emotionally stoic than women, making them typically better at handling important decisions and remaining calm under pressure. In times of hardship and crisis, it is strong, masculine men who protect and defend women and children. On the Titanic, it is the men who gave their lives to save the women and children. The obvious reason for this is because women are the ones who bear the children. A society can function and survive with 2 men to 10 women, but not the other way around. Now personally, I don't think we should treat men as disposable, and I don't support gynocentrism. It's not right or fair to treat men like they are insignificant and can all be sent off to dungeons or killed in battle. Ideally, we shouldn't be killing anybody, but sadly our world is run by a bunch of psychopaths who don't really care if any of us live or die. So it's up to us, the majority, to look out for each other and make sure we don't allow each other to be killed. It's important for men to be strong so they can be protective. What's more important is that women appreciate and honor the strengths of men. Think of all the millions of men who died during the First and Second World War to protect their countries, only to have a bunch of women, feminists, later that century, turn around and call men useless misogynists and upholders of patriarchy. If I were a man, I'd be pretty pissed off at that. And yes, all of you men watching this should be absolutely pissed off at feminists, and not be afraid to turn around and tell those darn feminists that their entire movement is trash. Because it is trash, and it's always been trash. Feminism is trash, and I'm not afraid to say it. Feminism is trash! That's right! 3 women are looking at me, they're probably all feminists. I'm making a video! In most cases in the world, men desire to protect and care for women more than to abuse and harm women. Unfortunately, the media frequently bombards people with stories of men raping and murdering women, when it's only a very small minority of men who actually rape and abuse women. In most cases, it's other strong men who protect women from those genuine arsehole men who are out there to hurt and harm women. By the way, I greatly empathize with any woman who has been abused by a man, and vice versa. I do not wish to downplay the severity of male violence against women, but the vast majority of men are simply not violent or abusive. If they were, societies would not be able to function because everyone would be tearing each other apart. Secondly, men are better at handling certain tasks than women. There are more men in STEM fields and positions like law and politics, not because of institutionalized sexism, which feminists often claim, but because more men than women are simply interested in these careers. What's really sad about feminism is that instead of appreciating women for our talents, like in arts and humanities, feminists frequently push for more women to adopt more male-typical careers, thus encouraging women to be more masculine instead of appreciating women's innate femininity. It goes without saying that plenty of women do work as engineers, lawyers and politicians, and they do an excellent job, but they still represent the minority, and there's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't be putting women down just because most women are not as ambitious as most men. We should appreciate the fact that most women would choose motherhood over career, and that is perfectly okay. Scientists like Dr. Deborah So and Luann Brizardine have written books on the differences between male and female brains. Yet sadly, many feminists still cite this as misogyny and neurosexism instead of seeing this as a blatant fact. I don't understand why accepting the differences between male and female psychology is somehow controversial. In the television show The Island, Bear Grylls had two groups, one with men and one with women. The women were more cooperative and domesticated, while the men were more solo-driven and better suited to hunting. This is not because we have been socialized this way, it's because this is how we have evolved. We don't have to adhere to rigid standards of behavior or return to extreme gender stereotypes, but we can still appreciate our differences and start viewing gender differences between men and women as a positive thing rather than as a negative thing. Thirdly, men do so many good things in society. If you look around, much of what we have in the world was built by men. The phone you're watching this video on was probably built by a man. The car you go to work in was probably built by a man. The office building you work in was probably built by men. The chair you sit in was probably built by a man, etc. Again, this doesn't discount what women do in society, but the problem is, feminists just don't appreciate what men do. They constantly insist that men building things, being police officers and doctors and engineers, working their asses off to provide for their families is an example of toxic masculinity. In the TV show Mad Men, many feminists would cite the men working there as upholding toxic masculinity, but one could easily say that those men were all under rigorous pressure to perform at a high task to provide for their families. In fact, one could argue that a man working 8 hours per day to provide for his family has a much tougher life and is under much more pressure than the housewife who gets to be with her children and cook and clean for her family without having some horrible boss who shouts at her all day. Now, this isn't to say that all housewives all had it easy and that women have never endured struggles too. But if we start to have more empathy for the hard tasks that men undertake and appreciate the good things that men do in the world, we might start to collectively look at men in a more positive light and value men for their roles as protectors and providers, rather than constantly undermine them and call them misogynists and upholders of patriarchy. Most men are not terrible people, and it's really sad how feminism has created this awful narrative that demonizes 50% of the human population for no reason. It's very similar to how African Americans were demonized for God knows how many centuries. Misanthropy is not good for the preservation of a species. We as a society must stop putting men down before men give up and leave us all. No one gets married, no one has children, and the entire society breaks down forever, and the feminists and the cultural Marxists win. Just like in my novel, since this is what they really wanted all along, to destroy society and rule over the ashes. They're like the White Walkers, man. The more we appreciate men, the more men will end up treating women better. After all, when a man is confident in himself, in control and command of his masculine energy, and achieving his personal best, he is going to be more motivated to be a better boyfriend and husband. Appreciating men serves women's interests, since most women desire marriage and romantic commitment. No self-respecting man is going to want to be in a long-term relationship with a woman who doesn't appreciate him or looks down on him. The negative attitude towards men is precisely what feminism ignites in women. But we don't have to accept this. We as women can all start looking at men as heroes and protectors, which will then inevitably inspire men to treat women with compassion and respect, which is exactly what society needs. So in conclusion, most men are not bad. Most men are not pigs. Feminism is a bunch of nonsense. And once again, on behalf of my gender, I'm sorry to all the men out there constantly having feminists ignore and demonize them. We will end this tyranny of feminism once and for all, and in good time progress towards a much happier future for women and men all together. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, and please don't kill anybody. Namaste.